Okay guys, so today we're going to be talking about graphs. Now we're going to be looking at a couple different graphs, but we're also going to be looking at the important information. So the first thing I want you guys to realize when you're looking at a graph is that each graph should have a title. In this case, our title is Small Town Teens with Cell Phones. So we know that this graph is going to be talking about teens who live in a small town who have cell phones. So this is our title. The next important information is the age in years. So the kid who's 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So this graph has to be talking about age in years. This is known as our x-axis. Now the x-axis is the line, the horizontal line that runs across. Now the way I remember that x always runs across is that an x is just two lines that are crossed. So if it runs across this way, it is always your x-axis. Now the other bit of important information is the number of teens. So how many teens in small towns have cell phones? This is our y-axis. So if you can remember that x, because it's across, always goes horizontal, the y-axis always goes up and down. It never changes. So now we look at this graph and let's see what we can learn about this graph. Well, we know in a small town, if we look at 13-year-olds, 229 of them in a small town will have cell phones when they're 13 years old. If we look at kids in a small town who are 14, 273 of them will have cell phones. If we look at kids when they're 19, 642 of them will have cell phones. So we're looking and seeing the information. And now we can go and see sort of what information is true. So if I were to say a kid who is 18, so 18-year-olds have more cell phones than 16-year-olds, you would say Mr. Elkin is right, because an 18-year-old will have 530 phones. An 18-year-old, so 530 18-year-olds will have cell phones, while a 16-year-olds, only 430 16-year-olds have cell phones. But if Mr. Elkin were to say 19-year-olds have less cell phones than 18-year-olds, well, we look at our table and look at our line graph and we see that 642 19-year-olds in a small town will have cell phones, as opposed to only 530 who are 18 who have cell phones. So we know what I just said is false. So you look at the graph to figure out the information, and you find out what is true and what is not and what's important. And like I said, the key things for us is the title, the name of the axis, so the x-axis runs across, the y-axis runs across. So this is just a video about reading graphs. So if we look at this other graph, we saw something like this in class. So let's get another pen. So I want you guys to pause the video right now and tell me what my x-axis is, what my y-axis is, what my title is, and something true that the graph tells you. So pause it right now and write down what your x-axis is, what your y-axis is, what your title, and something true. So if we look at this graph, so this is a line graph that has two bits of information. Now what they told us is our title is girls take more math and science classes. Okay, and girls are smarter than boys. So we can take these things together as our title. So this is our title. Okay, so girls take more math and science classes than boys. Boys are represented on the graph as a blue line and girls as an orange line. Okay, so we already know something like that. Our x-axis, like we said, is the one that runs across, is years. So 1990, 1994, 1998, 2000, and 2005. So our x is equal to years. Now it says, studies show that at an early age, girls are smarter than boys. Girls take more math and science classes. So they say high school credits earned in math and science. So if this x is our number of years, then this y that's going up and down is high school credits. So we know that this y, our y, is equal to credits. So we know that our y is equal to credits. So that's our x, that's our y, that's our title. Now what's true about this? Well, we can go and say that girls, with the exception of 1990, we're taking more math and science classes than boys. In 1994, girls were taking more. In 1998, girls were taking, basically from 1994 to 1998, girls took more math and science classes than boys. But we can say in 1990, boys, because it's above the girls, boys got more credits in math and science than girls. So this is another graph that we can look at. So again, this is a video just about reading graphs. Now here we have a graph all about books. It says so again, I want you guys to pause the video, find the title, the x-axis, the y-axis, and something true. So pause the video right now and come up with the title, the x-axis, the y-axis, and something true. So this graph is different from the other graphs that we saw. So this graph is actually called a bar graph. Our other graphs were line graphs. This is a bar graph because each one of these happens to be a bar. And the people who made this were very creative and they decided that they were going to go and make the bar as books. But if we look right here, this is where our 0 is, right over here. So our graph really only starts at this line where the 0 is. So this is our start of our graph. So we look at the graph. What's the title? Well, our title is the top 10 most read books in the world. So that's our title. Now we look. What's our x-axis? Well, our x-axis isn't a number like the other ones that we saw before. Our x-axis happens to be the books. So we have our books are the Holy Bible, quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong, Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, The Alchemist, The Da Vinci Code, Twilight Saga, Gone with the Wind, Think and Grow Rich, and The Diary of Anne Frank. These are the top 10 most read books in the world. Now, here we see 27, 30, 33, 43, 57, 65, 103, 400, 820, and 3900. Okay. Now, I don't think only 820 people have read the book, the quotations from Mao Zedong, or I don't think only 400 people have read the Harry Potter books. Okay. But this is still, all the books are x-axis. Our y-axis is how many people have read the books. Or how, actually in this case, it's the number of copies that were sold in the past 50 years. It's small, it's a little bit hard to see, but right here it says number of millions of copies sold in the last 50 years. So what we need to realize is this is 820 million, 400 million, 103 million. 65 million, 57 million, 43 million, 33 million, 30 million, 27 million, and 3 billion 900 million. So it's the number of millions of copies sold. So our x is all these books, and our y is the number of millions of copies sold. And something true about this graph, we could say that the Holy Bible is the most sold book in the world. We can go and say the Harry Potter series is more popular than the Twilight Saga, or we can say the Diary of Anne Frank is less popular than The Alchemist. So each one of these is telling us important information. So this, guys, is how you read graphs, how you read bar graphs. So you have your title, your x is the number of millions of copies sold, your y is the number of million copies sold, the x is, in this case in a bar graph, is the different types of books. We saw here that our x was the number of years, and our y was the number of credits, and our title was girls take more math classes and science classes than boys, which is true, which we saw over the years. And then here we saw teens with cell phones, that our x-axis was age in years because it runs across, our y-axis is up and down, and we saw that at 18 years old, only 530 teens in a small town will have cell phones. So I hope this video helps you guys learn how to read graphs. This is important that you need to know. We're going to talk about how to construct them soon. We're going to make our own graphs, and we're going to go from there. Okay, that's it guys. Take care. Bye-bye.